since the second half, really, how much they've really struggled. Charged with finding some stability from this.
Welcome back to the next episode of the Journey of a Grassroots Rugby Coach. And today, my guest is Duncan CHUBB. He's the current top squad forwards coach with Southern Districts in the Shute Shield. Duncan recently transitioned into coaching after his playing career, where he played 220 games for Southern Districts, as well as playing for the Melbourne Rising and New South Wales Country in the National Rugby Championship. And he also toured New Zealand in 2015 with the Australian Barbarians. In this episode, we talked about managing egos and expectations of players at club footy when you have Waratahs and Wallabies ahead of them on the pecking order, transitioning from the playing career, where he spent the entire career in the front row, and now having to learn what everyone else on the field actually does. We also discussed how every human is different and they all learn differently, and how we can use failure to improve as a human and as a coach. Duncan is also the owner of Wandering Bear Sports, and he creates highlights reels for players from all around the world at all levels of the game, including 100 plus capped international players. He's also the owner of Caffeine Gum Australia. And for both of those, I'll put the links in the show notes. I took a lot away from this, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I do.
Things I've learned this year, and I always knew it, but coaching really shined a light on it, is every single human being's different, different expectations. They see the world differently, they learn differently. And I feel, and like I struggle to call myself a coach because I've only been doing it for like nine games. But I feel like it's our job to get through to them. And if they don't understand it, that's our problem. It's not their problem. And we need to work out how to get through to them. You know, so I might be writing it down, showing them photos, whatever it is. Simon Cron said something very interesting to me. He goes, how many times have you been in a coach's box where you hear the other coaches go, well, we didn't tell them to do that. We didn't coach that. And I'm going, well, and he's going, well, if you're saying that, you didn't coach it well enough. And I could not agree. I've always thought that as a player, and as a coach, I just totally agree. It's up to you to get that across to them.
He can't find it. That's a mighty shot. A mighty Mark Lester.
Anyway, I'm looking forward to it. This is my first time on the other side, mate. So
on the other side, yeah. So we'll make a start on it. So just for the listeners, mate, just in a nutshell, 30 seconds. Duncan CHUBB, who are you? What do you do? Where are you coaching? Etc. etc.
The coaching side's easy. The who I am and what I do is probably going to take a little bit longer than 30 seconds. But Duncan CHUBB, I played all three positions in the front row at a first grade level or higher. Finished playing for Southern Districts last year. I played 220 games for the club. I think until recently, I was the most capped first grader in the history of the club. The great Jakey Douglas has got me beat now, I think. And this year, I wanted to jump into coaching. I've always been interested in coaching. I've done a lot of scrum coaching, and you know, with the program that Todd Loudon's put in at South, I'm like, this is a great opportunity to learn. So I actually started the year as like an assistant forwards coach. So basically like a token gesture to just help out, and you know, and the way things sort of ended up, I ended up being the head coach of second grade, and you know, one of the forwards coaches for the top squad. So yeah, first year of coaching, mate, I've enjoyed the hell out of it, learned an absolute bucket load, and yeah, that's pretty much it, mate, in terms of the footy stuff.
Nice. Yeah, it's quite daunting when you take that step back from playing and take up coaching. I know for the first probably 3 years that I did it, I still had the itch. And then once the itch was gone, it was just like, yeah, that's it. I can actually go and watch a game and not feel like I've got to put my boots on. And
Mate, after doing a toddler out in pre-season as a player, I did not get the itch.
I saw some of the videos, mate, because like I did not a lot of work, but I did some stuff with Todd when he was down here. And I've known Brett Gallagher for since he was in the West, so it's like I followed all the stuff you guys were doing. I just went, yeah, mate, way too old and broken to be doing that shit anymore.
No, I got really fit, really fit. But then I'm going this year. I just couldn't put myself through that. But Todd's a brilliant coach, so I was going to have the year off. But he's very generous with his knowledge and he's almost there to coach us, really, like the coaches. And he does a huge amount in that. And as in terms of me doing an apprenticeship as a coach and transitioning from a player to a coach, I honestly couldn't imagine a better situation. Like my home club, a place I love. A lot of my mates are still there. Probably the only thing that I kind of struggled with is, last year I was the life of the party because I was one of the old guys, big fan of having a beer. And then this year I'm not getting invited to player events anymore. So that was probably the only thing I found a little bit strange. And coaching's way more stressful than I actually thought it would be too. That's the only other thing.
Yeah.
The rest of it is seamless. I didn't miss playing too much. And yeah, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does, mate. It absolutely makes sense. And it sort of covers off that next bit of why you got into coaching, but it was just that continuation of the journey.
Well, look, I probably, if I'm honest with myself, I probably should have stopped playing a few years ago. I'd had quite played NRC a few years, had a little bit of a taste at the Rebels a couple of times. And, I probably, if I'm being really honest, I looked at it at the time and gone, this isn't really for me in terms of professional footy. But I've always loved the game. I love Southern Districts to death, and coaching fascinates me. Like getting a group of people on the same page with different egos, expectations, all that sort of stuff, and try and get them to the same goal. I think very few people actually do that really well, and I'm kind of a little bit not obsessed, but I'm fascinated by it. So it was kind of the natural progression for me.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the hard bit, mate, is getting everyone going in the same direction, especially at club level, because you've got egos and,
Well, it's fascinating. Coaching second grade, it was honestly an amazing apprenticeship because you got guys who are aspirational professionals. You got guys who are happy to be social players who just want to have a beer with their mates. And you've got guys who think they're better than they are. You got guys who are coming back from injury, and you got guys who in second grade with Waratahs and Wallaby guys ahead of them. So you got to try and manage all their expectations and egos. Mate, I learned so much this year, and considering some of the challenges we had as well, we got through it all right in the end.
Yeah, how do you find the challenge of, like you said, you've some of your first grade or your guys in second grade have got a Waratah or a Wallaby in front of them, and if that guy wasn't there, they'd be playing first grade. Yeah. How do you manage that in a player that's aspirational, but they're going, mate, I've got Stephen Moore is our first grade hooker. You look at I saw the UQ game on the weekend. They had Stephen Moore, Chibba Harrison, and Stephen Moore. The poor guy in second grade, he's just going, mate, who have I got to kill to get a run? How do you find those situations with the players?
Well, when I first started playing grade at Southern Districts, I played Australian schoolboys, done all that sort of stuff. I played my first year at Colts, then started playing grade a year young. And in our first grade pack, we had Nick Henderson, Guy Shepherdson, Dan Palmer, Tetra Faulkner, James McCormack, who played Australia A and the Brumbies, John Lungyo, who's currently playing French top 14. They were all our front rowers. And instead of going, I'm never going to play first grade, packing it in, I've gone, mate, what a great opportunity for me to learn off these guys. And I don't understand the attitude. If you're not seen as the best in your club and you go to another club, that's kind of it's an admittance of defeat in my eyes. And, something I've seen with a lot of guys is they're kind of focused on the end result rather than actually working hard and deserving it and earning it and being patient. Like in that kind of situation, like this year, we've got Andrew Tuala, who's a superstar. He should, if they're doing the catch pole medal, I don't know if they are, he should win it. And we've got a couple of young hookers in behind. And I'm going, you know, if you want to be a first grader or a professional rugby player, you got to be better than guys like this. So work hard, be patient, and do stuff to deserve it, rather than just cracking the shits and going somewhere else. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely, mate. Yeah, and like when you're rattling off those names, even, you know, even just two of those guys, if you'd have turned up at a club and they were your starting props, you'd go, I want to be where they are. What can I learn off them? You know, what are they doing that I'm not? What are they, you know, like, pick their brains. And I mean, I've known Hendo a few years, so he's quite happy to do that stuff as well.
Oh, absolutely. Like, to this day, the hardest scrums I've ever had in my career were my first couple of years of grade. And I've played against internationals from all sorts of different countries, and first grade versus second grade at Southern Districts training in 2009, I think it was, 2010, the hardest scrums I've ever had in my life. And, you know, something I've learned is I've sort of seen, been on the other side as a coach, is guys are very impatient to get to where they want to go, rather than be patient, do the work, and get better, and have your performances speak for themselves, rather than just jumping from opportunity to opportunity and just not really getting anywhere.
Yeah.
You know, and I'd like, for me as a coach, I'd like to coach professionally one day. But my attitude at the moment is I want to go to the place where I'm going to fulfill my potential. And I think at South at the moment, you know, that's the place to be, because it's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's probably a good tip for young coaches out there, is work out what your journey is. Not, oh, I'm going to go and coach, you know, I want to go and coach at Sydney Uni because they're the best team in the comp, or I want to, mate, who, and, you know, you look at what your journey is going to look like. And working with Todd, that'd be awesome. You know, what you're going to learn off him and the other guys up there is just phenomenal in that.
Mate, I've learned more about rugby in the last couple of years than I have in the last 10. Like, you think you know a thing or two, and then Todd comes in and just shakes the whole joint up. And mate, I've learned so much, and the more I'm learning, the more I realise I don't actually know anything.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. I've been doing this gig for a while, and yeah, the more you learn, and the more you speak to players and other coaches, you just go, mate. Sometimes you walk away and you just go, "Fuck, I'm a dumbass," but you're not. You know what I mean? Like, you're really good at what, and you know, how'd you find the transition from, like myself, being a front rower for the whole playing career, and then all the guys that are behind you trying to work out what they actually do?
Great question. So I got told I was the second grade coach before the East game. He's like, Chubby, I think, would you like to be the second grade coach? And this is like 10 minutes before the warm up. And he's going, all right, you're running the warm up. Okay. Sort of thrown in the deep end. I'm going, as a front rower, you think halfbacks, they get to the ruck, they pass the ball, and they talk a lot of shit. That's their job. That's all they do. But no, they actually have a lot to do. Wingers are important. Who would have thought? So for me, I ask a lot of questions. Our backs coach at Southern Districts, Michael Black, is a fantastic human being, and is, you know, an old teammate of mine. So I just send him clips every week. Is this what we're thinking? Is this what this guy's supposed to be doing? And I try and, when we do the team runs, I try and stand in behind the back line so that I can listen to what they're saying and try and work out what they're supposed to be doing. And something else that I've kind of learned is you don't really actually need to know everything. You've got to have a bit of an idea, and then make sure you have good people around you. So we had a couple of good assistant coaches for first grade at South who pretty much ran all the backline stuff with Todd. And I just had to go, when they ask questions, I just have to clarify. So you had to know a little bit, but didn't have to know everything. But yeah, mate, asked so many questions. I think they would have got sick of me after a while. I'd be writing notes and, you know, showing guys clips and asking the backs, and, you know, rather than pretending like I knew anything, I was very open with the fact that I didn't know. And I think that might have helped me a little bit.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point, mate. Being open that you don't know, because as soon as you start getting into that realm of, you know, why is the 10 doing that? And you think, you know, he's just going to throw something at, and you're just going to go, now it looks even worse because they know I don't know.
Yeah,
and I'm trying to fake it. Like
I always hated as a player. You ask if I was going to ask a coach something and they didn't know the answer, I would respect that way more. But if you don't know the answer, let's find it out. Don't just go, I don't know the answer. Or pretend like you know the answer and give a wrong answer, which is way worse, I think.
Oh, absolutely. And I think having that vulnerability with the players just to go, mate, I don't know. Like, I've never seen that before, or whatever the situation is. It just gives them that opportunity to go, well, hang on, the coach is actually saying he doesn't know. So he's obviously happy now for us to give him the same. Like, if they don't know, instead of them talking shit and making up, they might just go, Chubby, I don't know, mate. What do you reckon?
Yeah.
It just opens that whole communication field up.
Well, I kind of feel, so for me this year, I was trying to learn what backs do, but I also had to coach in the same terminology that Todd and Michael Black would use, because if you got the first grade coach saying one thing and your second grade coach saying another thing, that just doesn't work, in my view. You kind of want all your coaches on the same page. So I was, made lots of, someone had asked me a question. I go, well, what do you think? Which is a tactic Todd taught me, because forces the player to think about it, and a lot of them actually know the answer already. They're just looking for clarification.
Yeah.
But look, great question. I actually asked Wayne Smith the same thing, and he didn't really give me a straightforward answer. But it's kind of opened up the other side of the game to me, mate. Because for so long I was the front rower, tight forwards. I pretty much, you can always learn stuff, but I have a pretty good idea what's going on there. And now I've got to learn what game controlling is, tactical kicking, breakdown tactics. What are we doing in this part of the field? Or are we doing that part of the field? What's the opposition? So it's been really good. I've really, really enjoyed it, and it's made rugby interesting to me again.
Yeah. When I was playing, mate, I had the winger. His job was to get the ball when we kicked it out, wipe it, and hand it to the hooker so he could throw it for the line. That's all the winger did. But, I found out really quick that they actually do more than that. So
I still think so.
yeah, I know, right? Yeah. No, that's good, mate. And I think that's where a lot of coaches get caught, is they just think that they can't do it because they don't know everything, or they go in there and they try and bluff their way through it, and it just you fall on your ass real quick.
I'm very quick to admit that I don't know everything, and like I can't stand people that think they know everything and genuinely don't.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I had a boss a lot in a job that I had a long time ago, and he said, mate, you don't need to know everything. You just need to know where to find it, or and this was before Google and all that. And I just went,
I agree totally.
That's a pretty good thing. And you just go, well, mate, I don't know, but let me go and find out, or we'll ask them. There's always someone that will give you an answer on something.
Yeah, mate, absolutely.
And the other thing I found too is that they may know the answer, but it's called something else.
Yeah.
So what I'll often do to the players now, because we get a lot of backpackers and you just go, show me what you mean, and they'll go, oh, you mean this is what we used to call it, and they go, yeah. So then you've got to just get that clarity around the wording of what you're going to call it and stuff like that. Yeah.
Actually, funny story, we had a guy transition over from league this year. His name is Josh Tangatow, and he's he's a coach's dream. So the team meetings you have, and you're looking around the room, and the back rowers are kind of asleep, and the front rowers are paying attention. And Tangers was an inside centre who was always eyes up, writing notes, just making sure he took in everything. So Todd calls, the first guy that arrives at a ruck that sort of seals over the ball. So we call that a gorilla punch. That's our coaching terminology, because it helps guys. And Tangers was like, is a gorilla punch an actual part of the game that everyone calls it? So he was talking to his brother who plays for another club in Sydney. He's like, oh, do you guys do gorilla punches as well? Or like, that was a good gorilla punch. And he didn't realise that was our terminology and not actual just rugby terminology. So, I think that's important. Make sure that guys understand, because they might call it something else.
Yeah. and you'll save yourself, 10 minutes of a session, trying to re-explain it. And in the end, they go, "Oh, it's called this, or it's called fucking whatever." So that's a really good lesson there, mate. Is just to get that clarity from the players. What are some of the lessons you've learned in the brief coaching experience that you've had, that you could pass on to either, guys that are just starting out, or guys that, and like a lot of the guys, there's a few of us that took a different track, but we usually turn up and they go, "Oh, your son's playing, here you go, here's the balls, here's the whistle, off you go," and you get stuck. I was like yourself. I just went straight from playing into coach. Well, I was still player coach when I was going, and I've never coached any of my kids. That was just the way I was. But yeah, you get a dad or a mum, gets too slow to move back or whatever, and they get handed the bag and the balls. What's some of the lessons you've learned in the last 12 or 18 months around that you could pass on to?
Man, I've learned heaps. It's funny. Todd ran a Zoom, and Todd and I ran a Zoom for all the junior coaches in our area maybe a month ago, and I came away from it thinking how vitally important junior coaches are to the game in this country. That's a hard job. They're not given resources. A lot of them are just relying on their own experience, and I kind of feel like if we could set up some kind of mentoring system to help junior coaches, and I think that would probably increase the standard a bit, because like we've got some good guys in our Colts, but guys are arriving at Colts without the fundamental skills of like tackling, and they don't have that sort of core skill. And I'm not necessarily sure that that's the junior coach's fault, because they're doing the best they can, but they probably need more resources. But in terms of like things I've learned this year, and I always knew it, but coaching really shined a light on it, is every single human being's different, different expectations. They see the world differently, they learn differently. And I feel, and like I struggle to call myself a coach because I've only been doing it for like nine games, but I feel like it's our job to get through to them. And if they don't understand it, that's our problem. It's not their problem. And we need to work out how to get through to them. So it might be writing it down, showing them photos, whatever it is. Simon Cron said something very interesting to me. He goes, how many times have you been in a coach's box where you hear the other coaches go, "Well, we didn't tell them to do that. We didn't coach that." And I'm going, well, and he's going, "Well, if you're saying that, you didn't coach it well enough." And I could not agree. I've always thought that as a player, and as a coach, I just totally agree. It's up to you to get that across to them. What else have I learned? There's you in terms of being a coach, there's actually not, second grade anyway, on game day you actually do very little, and that was something that really surprised me, because I thought you're actually supposed to set the tone and do all that kind of stuff, but the harder part of it's managing the team, and the actual job's already done by Thursday really. So there's that. Obviously learn a lot of rugby specific stuff, but I think if I was a young coach, I'd find someone like in my situation, I just pick Todd's brain, ask questions, reach out to people who know something that you want to know, and just don't be afraid to ask, because I don't know what your experience has been, but for me, rugby people are very generous with what they know, and they want to help other people out. And I couldn't, you've listened to some of the podcasts I've done. I do that because I just reach out to people, and they're very generous. And I think if you want to speed up your knowledge, that's probably a good way to go about it. If that makes sense. I'm probably not giving you what you want.
No, absolutely it does. And that was something that I struggled with for a long time, was asking someone that I perceived as a better coach than me, because I always had that thing, they're not going to tell me nothing. They're just going to tell me to piss off or whatever. But then once you start doing it, and if this whole COVID epidemic has taught me anything, it's like you said, people are so generous with their time.
Yeah.
And I think if you do ask somebody something, even if it's just to attend a session, 95% of the time they're going to say yes. And if they say no, they're going to give you a legit reason.
Yeah.
Like they might go, oh, look, we're not doing a normal session this week. We're doing this, or, we've whatever. And you go, oh, cool.
But certainly in my experience, mate, and like Wayne Smith said it to me years ago when the Auckland Blues won Super Rugby, they presented everything that they did for that entire year to all the other franchises in New Zealand. Like imagine Australians doing that, just unheard of. But Wayne went up to Graham afterwards and was like, well, why are you doing that? He goes, because now I have to come up with new ideas and I have to improve myself. So by sharing, he's actually helping himself.
Yeah.
And it's like talking to you, mate, like I was looking forward to this because this is going to sort of clarify my own thinking of what I've actually learned.
Yeah.
Because you talking about it actually helps me, if that makes sense. And
yeah, oh, absolutely, yeah.
Hopefully it helps someone else, but it's also helping me.
Yeah, yeah, and even the coaches that you speak to that are at that next, they're either one level or two or three levels higher than what you are, they're not giving you their IP. They're just giving you, knowledge. They're not giving you what they're going to do on the weekend if you're going to play them and that type of stuff. But they might help you out with, you got a guy that's struggling with his tackle tech, or, you got, oh, shit, my loose head's getting dominated all the time. I just can't see what he's doing wrong. And they'll just go, well, this, and this. But they're not actually giving you their tactics. So, yes, you're learning, but they're not, and once I worked that out, I just went, oh, okay, these guys are quite happy to help you. Because I think in Australia, we're really good at the education side of it, where you go and you sit in a classroom for 2 days and then you walk out and you can't remember anything that you've learned. But we don't teach our coaches how to coach.
Yeah.
Like we go, right, they've got to tick these off, blah, 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 blah. Off you go. And you walk out there and you've got to realise some people you got to tell them, some people you got to draw pictures, you got to get blocks of wood out. But they don't, a lot of times you don't get taught that. You've got to learn that and fail at it a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, mate. Failure is a very interesting topic because I think a lot of people are afraid of failure and afraid of trying things because they don't want to look stupid and they don't want to, mess up and all that sort of stuff. But I kind of feel like that's actually critical to success. And our scrum coach this year, he wasn't there, so I was running the scrum session, and I've gone, and Todd's watching, and I get on really well with Todd, but he's still. If I mess up during training, I don't want to be that guy, and I've tried something in front of him and it just didn't work. So I know that now, so I won't do it again. But if I didn't try that, I wouldn't have known.
Yeah. And if you try it and it comes off, you go, oh, yeah.
That's right.
and it comes back to that bit we talked about before, and I've done it at junior clubs I've been at, not so much with the senior clubs I've been at. It's just stopping a drill halfway through and going, guys, this is shit. It's not doing what we want to do. Let's just scan it and move on. So we're getting something out of it. But yeah, fail, but be able to identify it and don't get shitty with it. And okay, that drill didn't work, but what can I do to make it work, or is it not worth pursuing anymore?
But just on the other side of that, Todd actually does something really interesting. Is that he sets drills and scenarios so that people do fail.
Yeah.
And he likes to use that as a learning opportunity for the players. So I think he calls it the whole part whole method of coaching, where it's throw them in the deep end, encourage them to fail. Then you go away and you work on that certain part of the game, like macro or micro skill, whatever it's called. And then you go back in and as a player, I liked it, but as a coach, you watch people go back to the hole and you go,
yeah,
there's serious method to this madness here.
And I think as young coaches, we get caught into that every drill. You're not allowed to drop the ball. You're not allowed to do this, which looks really good. But then when your 10 gets into a game situation and he can't catch pass under pressure, you're going, what's wrong with you, mate? Yeah, because he just stands in one spot and that's all he does all night at training.
Yeah. Well, one of Todd's great sayings is rugby is an imperfect game, and you want to play the imperfect game perfectly.
Yeah.
Such a good way of thinking about it.
And I know one of the webinars that Scotty Wisemantle did, he says about 70%, 60 to 70% of his drills at the level he coaches at, they should be there's a fail. That's a fail point.
Yeah.
And then, like you said, then they go away and they work on catch pass or tracking or whatever the exercise is, and then they come back, and you just see a huge improvement in them.
Well, I think it's critical. That's another thing I've learned this year. Failure is actually critical, and don't be afraid of failure. Yeah,
and that's a great point, mate. Yeah, and that's where I think as young coaches they just get caught in that. I'm not allowed to get it wrong. I'm not allowed, that win it all. I've got to win because I'm a new coach, and I've got to. Everything needs to look perfect. Some of the shit I've tried over the years. Once I got that whole hole into my head, it's just takes the boys a little bit to realise that I'm just throwing shit at them to make them stuff up.
Did you make notes after of the mistakes you've made so that you know not to do it again?
Yeah. I got a heap of stuff on my phone. I sometimes video stuff as well, and I'll just go, that didn't work. But I can do, if I do it, what if I do it this way next week, or take 3 guys out or whatever. But
have you found this as well when you first started coaching? I'm sorry to take over the podcast.
No, go for it, man.
It's when I made a mistake as a coach, it actually it hurt me way more than when I did it as a player, because I'm like, like the first couple of games this year, trying to set the timings up for the warm-up so that it was precision and that the guys weren't in the change rooms too long or they weren't too rushed. And like, to be honest, I fucked it up a couple of times. And you can't say that's the reason we lost, but it ate away at me because I didn't do a good enough job for the players. Did you find that as well when you first started?
Probably not when I first started, because it was sort of, I would have hated to have been coached by me when I started, mate.
Really?
I was an absolute flog. Looking back now, I'd just go, mate, I'd have walked away. But yeah, the more I've got into it and the more I understand around it, like even this year, we've done a warm up, and me and the head coach and the attack coach, we've gone, that was the worst fucking warm up we've ever done. And they come out and they're on fire.
Yeah.
And then the next week they're humming at the warm up, and it takes them 20 minutes. And you're just going, we just don't know, mate. We're just, like one week their warm up was shit and they played really well, and then the next week the warm up was like nothing you've ever seen. It was just basically bang on, and that they went out and it took them 20 minutes to get firing. And you just go, what are we doing wrong? Like,
yeah.
But yeah.
I had that. I kind of was like, we say the right things, we get the mood right, we get the meeting right, we do all the little micro meetings and all that sort of stuff. Great warm up. All the boys are on fire. They're looking good. They're talking good, and we get flogged.
Yeah.
By a team that's not better than us, in my opinion.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I've got. I don't mind being beaten, but I hate to lose.
Yeah.
Like if we play a team that is far better than us and they beat us and we've given them I live with that every day. But when you lose a game that you should have, and everyone knows you should have won it,
Well, we played the top 5 teams in second grade this year, and we lost them all by less than 5 points. Yeah. And we were ahead until the last 20 minutes, I think, for all those games. And penalty goal goes the other way. We score a try there instead of knocking it on. Instead of being 6th or 7th, we're actually first on it. So very, very small margins actually make a big difference.
Yeah, and I think we got a bonus point from every loss this year. So we lost within. So you walk away and you just go, "What the hell, boys? Like dumb shit." Yeah, it's you never get you learn to adjust to it, but you never get used to it, mate. And I think coaches take it harder than the boys are in 6 beers in at the bar, and you're still sitting there going, "Fuck, what if we'd have done that? Why did this happen? And why did that happen?" And
yeah, I felt the same. I struggled with it a little bit this year. You know, the stress of it, and after games, I'd be just exhausted after games, and I hadn't done anything. You know, and you'd have a couple of beers and just, you know, what's the game instead of going out with your mates. You know, it was a bit of an interesting change for me. I enjoyed it, but it was an interesting change up from being a player, whereas if we lost, I'd forget about it straight away pretty much.
Yeah.
As a coach, it ate away at me until the next week.
Yeah, because then you've got to work. You start thinking about, what do I need to change at training? What do we need? You know, and the players, they're just on the beers and they're just doing what they do.
Yeah, well, I was the same, and I can understand it.
Oh, mate, yeah. When I was a player, it was like, oh, well, we got beat. Let's get smashed and have a good time. How did you find, and you briefly touched on it before, that transition from, like, you basically stopped playing this year, like end of that year, and had the whistle the next year. How did the relationship with some of those players, did that change?
It did a little bit. I was probably, front and center of the party for a lot of my career. I think it's fair to say. But you can't do that as a coach, I don't think. So it was, you know, a lot of the older guys in first grade I'd played with, but a lot of the new guys and the young guys, you know, I'd played a little bit with, but they're not really, you know, we're friendly and we're mates, but they're not my friends, if that makes sense. So I kind of had a rule that I'd still have beers with a couple of my mates who were playing, but I wouldn't go too hard where possible. And I tried to avoid the new guys or the younger guys. But I kind of like Steve Hansen's theory about coaches getting close to players coaches getting close to players. And you know how some coaches don't like doing that? I kind of like Steve's theory where he would get close to players because it would help him coach them better the way that they wanted to be coached. And he said his decision-making was always for the betterment of the team, and he didn't let his relationships with individuals affect that. So I've kind of tried to do that. So I'm not going to be a total not go out and not get to know the boys, but I was very careful to make sure that I sort of trod that line. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you get in the situation which I haven't been in because I have actually when I first started coaching, where they just go, mate, you're telling us now not to do this, and you were the guy that was driving the bus last year?
No, I never told him. I never told him not to. I was always, I could never have done that because I would have been being hypocritical, and they all knew me well enough to know that, you know, he's telling us not to have a beer, that guy. So I didn't want to be that guy, but I would, you know, with a lot of the second grade guys who wanted to play first grade, I'd kind of go, well, you know, one thing you know about Todd Loudon is if you play him well, he's going to pick you up. So if you're not getting picked, make sure your actions are matching what you want. If that's not getting on the piss, don't get on the piss. Do your training, do your work. Make sure your performance speaks for itself, and you'll get what you want. So I kind of framed it like that rather than saying don't get on the piss. You know, because I think you're in second grade, some of them are aspirational, some of them are just social players. And I still think having a beer is important. I know that's becoming more and more frowned upon in today's society, I guess, but there's a couple of ways to get to know people, and having a beer after a game where you've worked hard and deserved it is something I still see as important. So I haven't changed my mind on that yet.
Mate, absolutely. There's time for beers and there's time for other things, and I think you got to get that balance right, and that can be difficult for young coaches as well, to get that balance between having the good time and the serious time.
Well, I feel like you got to deserve it. That was kind of my thing. If you want to have beers. You know.
So when you train at South, does the second grade train separately to the first grade, or do they train together?
So Todd does it. Todd runs the coaching team in a very interesting way. I don't know how other people do it, but he calls it team coaching. So like next year, I'll be doing a lot more with the forwards around scrum and more. So I'll be running those sessions, but then we'll have the other forwards coaches in around the fringes, micro coaching or, fixing technique or fixing this and fixing that. So it's kind of all done together. And then, so you do your skills and your fitness and some of the game-specific stuff together, but then it's first grade versus second grade, and then third grade rotates in. But during the season, it's pretty much just first grade, second grade, and then third grade, they're almost their own entity with fourth grade, and then guys will just rotate in around that. So, yeah, he does it I kind of like how he does it, because even though I'm the second grade coach, I'm still right in the thick of the team stuff going, hey, you need to do that, the breakdown. I'll make sure you do this, make sure you do that. But Todd's running the session, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense, mate. That's a good. We probably do something similar.
But he's very big on that. So, like, if I'm running a scrum session next year, what I would like is that I'm running the scrum session. I've got one coach behind first grade coaching the back five to do what we want. So obviously it's up to me to upskill those guys so that they know what we're looking for. Then there's another guy over the other side who's doing the second grade pack. So instead of one person just coaching everything, you've got everyone in around you sort of bringing everyone up. And as someone who's just started coaching this year, I'm going as a scrum coach, coaching 3 packs and giving them the best of what you have is very difficult, because some of the first group, there might be a problem in the front row, right? But your second rowers are probably the bigger issue. Then you've got to focus on the bigger issue and not necessarily the front row. Whereas a lot of coaches would just go to what they know and go front row, and leave the back row behind. But if you've got enough guys in and around you who can actually bring up the slack, I think that's better for everyone.
Yeah,
from my observation of it.
And it's difficult because I've run sessions where you got second grade, first grade training together. I'm one person trying to watch 16 guys.
That's right.
And everyone just goes, "Oh, the front row's gone down." Yeah, okay, but why?
And then you might have someone who's seriously technically deficient, and then you're spending all your time fixing that guy, and then everyone else is not getting any coaching and not getting any better, and then you almost cut your session by just focusing on the one guy. Yeah. So I think having a few good coaches in around you, particularly forwards, I'm yet to be convinced on what backs actually do during their sessions, but with the forwards, it definitely helps. Definitely.
Yeah, no, I like the sound of that, actually. We often have the second grade coach helps me with the scrum stuff, but the more eyes on it, the better.
So I would if I was my ideal world, I'd have someone else running the front row, because our front row are all very good. But I think the biggest improvement that a lot of club teams could make at scrum time is the back five, because that's where all your weight's coming from, and nobody coaches it. Coaches it. It's just an underutilized area. So I'd spend a lot of my time on the back five, getting them firing, and then just making sure the front row know what's going on, and that's how I'd do it.
Yeah, you're right about the back five, mate. They, over 30% of the power comes from the back three.
Absolutely.
That's just your back three, not your locks. So, and as you know, mate, if one of those guys is out of position by a little bit, it can just turn the whole scrum.
Man, I played with Sidaleki Tamani and Kane
big
Douglas.
Human, both big humans.
But as a front rower, and I was very average athletically, but if you have these big guys behind you, all you have to do is hold your shape and chase your feet. Yeah. And that's pretty much your job's done. Like, it's hard to look bad unless you really are bad.
Yeah. But then when you're trying to hold your shape, hold the scrum up, transfer everything forward because you've got nothing behind you, it goes to shit really quick.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I think for me, it's obvious. You can look at teams, and you'd know the same up there. You can look at teams that have actually got coaches that know how to coach a scrum, or do they just have a forwards coach that, you know, can run a line out, and, you know, they're probably a 7 or an 8. So, you know, they can maul, they can, you know, clean out, and they can do some line out stuff, but they can't actually scrummage very well because they haven't got someone in there that is a scrum coach rather than a forwards coach.
I agree. And there's a lot of that in Australian rugby at the moment, just quietly.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, by the time someone can get to that level, it's too hard to change old habits.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, that's a rabbit hole for another day, mate. We could talk about that for hours.
Absolutely.
But yeah, awesome, mate. So we sort of half talked about it before, your development stuff. What are some of the tips you'd give? Like, if you, it's probably a bit difficult for you because you don't coach at that junior level, but if you were a junior, if you had a mate that was going to take up coaching because they got their son plays under sixes or something, what sort of advice would you give them around that upskilling as a coach?
I'd probably try and find my senior club and ask the coach there if I can come to a few sessions and watch and take notes. That's probably, yeah, you're right. I've never coached juniors. Probably be good for me to do some junior coaching just to try and really get that core skill down, because I think that's probably something I need to get better at. But yeah, I think find your local rugby club, ask the coach there if you can come and watch. I guarantee most coaches will say absolutely come down, and try and build that relationship and ask questions. And, you know, I think the concept of having a mentorship is very important for coaches at all levels. Even like look in New Zealand with their Super Rugby guys, they kind of assign them a mentor. So like Tana Umaga at the Blues, and even guys like Wayne Smith and Steve Hansen had a mentor at the All Blacks. So I think that's very important. I think try and do courses if you can. You're going to get little takeaways from everything you do. I'm doing my level 3 at the end of the year, hopefully. So ask questions. Don't be satisfied with that's just the way it's always been done. And think about it. And yeah, I think it's not something that happens overnight, mate. But I think if you keep pushing yourself to find answers and ask questions, and that's probably a good way to start.
Yeah,
that's what I've been doing anyway. I have no idea if it works or not yet. But it's a tough gig coaching juniors, I reckon.
It's a hard gig because it's not just the players that you got to deal with.
Yeah,
I've never really done I've done like sessions with young kids, but probably about under 16s is the lowest I did. So the under 15 Gold Cup stuff. And like, if a senior player's late for training, you can go, mate, what were you late for training? Oh, I got hit traffic. And you can't do that to a kid. Oh, yeah, mum forgot to bring me, or, because there's that extra cog in the wheel, that there's parents there, and there's,
and different expectations as well. Like, I think difficult kids tend to have difficult parents.
Yeah.
And I've seen the same in, adult rugby at all, throughout my career. I'm pretty sure that holds true. It's like difficult kids have difficult parents.
Yeah, 95% of the time. Yeah, you're right. And the ones the difficult kids that have got decent parents, once you actually get them and doing stuff, and like, they usually find they're actually not too bad. They just need some guidance and that. But yeah, the difficult kids have always got difficult parents.
Yeah, it's been very eye-opening for me to sort of see that from the other side.
Mate, I'll give you a tip if you ever want to do kids. What I did, when I did that under 16 team that I was coaching, the first session we had, we didn't even get any footies out. Got everyone in the club rooms, parents, players, everybody. And I just gave them, this is my expectation. This is what I expect from you guys. This is what I expect from the parents. Like, laid it all out. I don't care whether we win or lose. I want to make your son the best rugby player they can be. And if we get beat, so be it. But, you know, blah, 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 blah. Don't come and talk to me 5 minutes before training because I don't have time. You know, like, just set out all these rules.
Yeah.
And, mate, it went clockwork. It was just like, yeah, because the boys just went, oh, good. Mum and Dad would just then drop them off, because I was 16, drop them off and then leave. So they're not getting yelled at training by the parents. The kids reckon it was great. The parents just went, oh, okay, yeah, cool.
I wouldn't be able to deal with that.
No, yeah, it was. I had a good manager. I had a good manager at the time, and a couple of good parents that was sort of ran a bit of a block for me every now and again. But yeah, it was just, it can be hard work, especially when a kid doesn't get as much time as they think their parents think they should be getting.
Yeah, it's like, why am I not getting picked? Because you're not playing well enough. Yeah,
and we sort of, I get both arguments with the kids have got to get equal game time and all this type of stuff. And I said to the parents, I said, look, I'm happy to give kids an equal game time across the season. Like, if we're in a game and there's 5 points in it, and, you know, I'm not going to make changes just so your kid gets on the field, because that, you know, there's all that continuity stuff. And they went, oh, okay. I said, but he will then probably start the next week and get a full 8. Like,
mate, do you think this as well? Like, I feel like some adversity is almost a good thing for kids.
Yep.
Like, but the thing that's kind of set me off on my career, for lack of a better way of describing my footy career, was I didn't get picked for the under-15s New South Wales country team. And I probably should, 14s. And I wanted to, and I probably should have. And then I got really down and dejected about it. But instead of just whinging and going off and doing something else, I trained really hard and got picked the next year. Like, if you're not getting something, work for it rather than just being given it.
Yeah. And the good players will do that. But the kids know, mate. We got to the semi-final, grand final it was. And like, we named the team, and I said to the guys on the bench, I said, like, you guys are on the bench, and they all went, yeah, we know why we're on the bench, because the guys that are out there are better players than us. But if you need us to go on, we'll give you what we've got. But kids know, mate. They know why they're not picked.
I feel like adversity is a good thing.
Oh, absolutely.
Particularly for kids. Like, I was talking to my dad the other day, I'm like, when we eventually get out of this generation will have built a whole heap of new resilience for those that survive it than before. Because you're going through. I think it has to be a good thing at the end of the day.
Yeah.
As much as we don't like it.
Yeah. No, mate, this has been great. This is awesome. It's really good to get the perspective of a coach that's sort of just making the start of that journey, as opposed to some of the other guys I've spoken to that have been doing it for years. So no, it's been really good, mate. That's about all I've got for you, unless you've got anything else. Do you want to give any of your side hustles a plug, mate? Feel free.
Oh, mate, how much time do you have? So I run a podcast as well, Wandering Bear Sports. Talking to, this week I've got Lockie McCaffrey on, former Brumbies, Austin Gilgronis, great bloke. I'm talking to Tim Sampson on Wednesday, so that'll be out in a week or two. Western Force coach. What else do I do? I make highlights reels, so if any players need highlights reels.
So what's some advice you could give to players and, well, coaches that they could give their players around highlights reels?
Okay, so highlights reels will get you in the door for a good place, but it's only really showcasing your skill set. If you this is for professionals, right? So if you're an aspiring professional, like I've done highlights reels for 100 test internationals. If they need them, you'd probably do as well. So what they do is that'll get you in the door for someone to have a look at you, and then they'll go away and do more research on you. But I can tell if someone's going to make it or not, depending on how they negotiate the price with me, because I'm relatively cost effective. And a lot of people will still argue on it. And I'm like, the best players, they invest in themselves. They're willing to invest in their career. And a lot of people think they do want to do that, but they don't. It's kind of a long-winded answer, but you do need a highlights reel. Make sure it's the best stuff that you have, showcasing your skill set. If you're trying to get a career professionally or at a big club, and pay someone to do it. The amount of terrible highlights reels I see just does my head in, because people don't want to pay for it. They think, oh, yeah, I'll do my own. And then they're going to miss out on opportunities because they're not presenting their skill set in the best way possible. So invest in your careers would be the biggest advice I would give any player, whether that's nutrition, strength and conditioning, or something as silly as a highlights reel. Invest in yourself.
Yeah. And it's good advice too for coaches. Invest in yourself. Like you said, you just go out and do stuff to make yourself better.
100%. I feel like that sort of stuff never ends, mate.
No, it doesn't. And like you said, mate, the more we learn, the more we realise there is way more to learn. So,
yeah, absolutely.
No, mate, that's been awesome. Thanks for your time. I know
mate, good chat.
All in lockdown and not really got much else to do, but time's precious.
I'm getting over it just quietly.
200 days, mate. When you get to 200 days, you can let me know.
Yeah, I couldn't. Well, I think we're in our 60s.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, for this block, 60s. I think before might have been similar.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's go.
It's crazy. Crazy stuff.
Mate, it's good to chat. Love what you're doing.
Great. Thanks, Duncan.
Appreciate it, mate. Enjoy.
Rightio.
Move off their own ball. That is monstrous.
Held at the back by the foot of Ben Norman, kept in England.